Greetings from Las Vegas and welcome to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with you on a Tuesday night. Glad to be representing EOG. The three letters stand for Eye on Gaming. EOG.com, a website dedicated to the hearts and minds of sports bettors everywhere. King Revolver serves as our head moderator. Boat, and Trip handle the contests at EOG, and we invite you to stop by and take a gander. The main forum, it's easy to register, free to register, and you can browse around and see what the community has to offer. I always enjoy it when the smart, sophisticated gamblers check in. We had Sundown come in last week. In fact, he may appear on the program later this week. Sundown, one of the sharp Las Vegas-based sports betting pros. Always good to see when Heim checks in, Alan Dinkinson is around, and ComptrBob and Ed the Statman. Those two, I like when they contribute to the forum. We've got ComptrBob contributing to the radio show tonight. Ed the Statman tomorrow night. ComptrBob, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, John. It's nice to be with you again. 3
straight Tuesday nights, Bob, and your appearances are well received. I know our community, especially the smart guys, the math guys, they like when you're on the radio program, and Bob is going to go on record with his Pac-12 preview. He'll have a selection at the end of that Pac-12 preview. He'll give us one regular season win total in the Pac-12. He'll also provide a baseball play and a WNBA selection for tomorrow. So 3 plays from Bob on tonight's program. You're showing off your versatility.
Yeah, either that or I'm spreading myself too thin. The advantage of the regular season win total will be that I won't be able to be fully lynched until probably November.
That can happen in the EOG community, Bob. It's a tough crowd there, but, tough, I think, in the right spots. I like the fact that our community harshly criticizes those who are in the sports advisory business, not the honest guys, but they really take out the guys who are shady. And, boy, we all know those kind of touts, too. The guys who promote their weekly record when their monthly record is subpar, or they promote their monthly record when their yearly record is in the tank. And by all means, the shady tout never talks about his lifetime mark.
Yeah, that's usually the one that they really try to avoid in 98% of the cases. But it's not only just their record. There is no universal record for some of these people. An old example was Wayne Root, who would have a millionaires club and a friendly gamblers club, and all kinds of goofy segments, which has been kind of faithfully executed or replicated now by Fezzik, who has a Bet as a Pro club, which is the high roller club of $1,000 a month, and then a System Log Club, which he sells picks on a daily basis, and then he's morphed the two into a Bet Like a Pro 20 club, and now I think he's going to sell his college and NFL picks separately. So he'll have more records than I can keep up with.
He had a SummerSlam special recently. I was surprised at that, whatever that means. It wasn't long ago, Bob, he was mocking Big Al McMorty for being in the sports advisory business. He really threw it at Al one night at the Stardust Hotel and Casino, and boy, it played to rave reviews too. Fezzik mocking Big Al McMorty, but I believe the 2004 Fezzik, Bob, would be very disappointed in the 2014 Fezzik.
Yeah, I agree, because I was a faithful reader and contributor to the old forum called Fezzik's Place, which later became the old LVA Sports, which then became the new LVA Sports. And so, in the early forums, Fezzik was just very rightly critical of many of the tout services.
Bob is here to talk Pac-12 football. I'll go on record with some points about the Big Ten. I've followed that conference closely for years, and I've got an interesting discovery about Big Ten football. I'll tell you, the man that has single-handedly, I think, brought down the Big Ten in terms of its losing its prestige on the national stage. We'll see if Bob agrees with me. But the one guy in the mid-2000s who I think really added to the decline in the competition level of the Big Ten. We all know their bowl record of recent years, and Ohio State, a team that can't beat an SEC team in a bowl game. We'll talk about that on tonight's show. So a lot to cover on tonight's program. But before we get to new business, let's talk old business for a moment. I know you have many followers at EOG, Bob. They appreciate your math-based analysis. Gamebred and Inkwell77 are two of your closest followers.
Yes, they are, and as well as Marnie Blitz has contributed to the thread as well. And so we made a couple comments last week's show about the book Signal and the Noise by Nate Silver, and I made a few comments, and that raised some more questions on statistical methods. And so, at the risk of boring the readership, and I will not get into excruciating detail because I could spend an hour and most people would be dead, fall asleep at the end of it. But I would like to respond a little bit to the points and some of the questions that were raised by those Inkwell and Gamebred.
Inkwell77 had a question: does ComptrBob ever take into account streaks of any sort? Or another way to phrase the question would be, does ComptrBob ever take into account a string of unusually good or unusually bad performances when handicapping games? Well,
and I think the answer, very briefly, is yes, I do, because I think sports can be streaky. It's always subject, though, to the observer bias, and so you have to be very careful that you're not willing a streak on a team, or you're ignorant of important streaks where you're just focusing on the particular streaks that come to your attention because of your own biases. So I would say yes, and I think a good example was the Kansas City Royals and the way they've played over the last couple of weeks, obviously with the Detroit Tigers at the same time tanking or appearing to tank. So I do take those into account, but I certainly try to put them into perspective, in that streaks of any sort are going to happen randomly. And so you have to use your judgment in separating the streaks due to really good performance and the streaks that may just be a lucky bounce of the ball.
On the heels of this question, Gamebred asks, when it comes to handicappers, does ComptrBob believe in the use of logarithmic functions in order to ascertain their expected longest losing sequence? For example, a 54% capper over 500 plays could expect to lose 8 in a row. Does ComptrBob lend any credence to this method?
Well, I think, yes, you can use streak calculators, which are just basically probabilistic simulations that give the equation. If you know a particular capper is going to pick every pick at 54%, you can predict the chances that he'll get a streak of either 8 wins in a row or 8 losses in a row. But I don't put any particular importance on that particular streak unless it happens to be, again, systematic of a fundamental misreading. So you may be a 54% capper, but the market may have changed. Now, it's not going to change radically, but if it changes a little bit, your 54% may change, and then your chances of losing 8 straight will become more, and your chances of winning 8 straight will become less. So I think it's important to reassess, particularly for yourself. If you're on winning streaks, I noticed that Palmtree made the comment last Friday that he tends to press his bets when he's on a winning streak, and that may well be good for him. But I would warn people to try to be perhaps a little bit more scientific in that try to, if you do have multiple weight plays, try to have some confidence and really work on your probability. Are you a 54% capper? And if you are, bet accordingly, and don't necessarily just bet because you've won 5 in a row. Don't necessarily freeze up and stop just because you've lost 5 in a row.
Did you gamble and win tonight, Bob?
I actually did. It was actually a fun night. I'm still watching the San Francisco Chicago White Sox game that's gone into extra innings, and I got roped into a fantasy baseball league, which started mid-season, and so it has made my game a little bit sharper. I've participated before in a sports memo-based one. This one that I'm in now, it's no money involved, but it was based in John Esquaga's Nugget in Sparks, and so I not only have my financial interest, but I also have a fantasy baseball interest, and so I did have a positive night, but again, one night out of many. You just need to have more positive sessions than losing sessions, and you have to grind it out in baseball.
Where do you do your best work, Bob? Where do you think the opportunities lie right now in the sports betting marketplace?
Well, we've discussed this again on earlier shows, and for me, I think it's in the in-progress betting scenarios that you can find in Nevada, and you can also find online in some offshore sports books. But if you become, if you hone your analytical skills, I think there's a chance that you can be pretty successful. I did make a few winning bets in preseason football in progress, just because I thought the line was overreaction in the fourth quarter. Those two bets where I took the Rams plus 8.5 at plus 125 at William Hill. These were both bets at William Hill, and then I took Detroit when they're behind to Cleveland at I think it was plus 420 on the money line. These were both small bets because I can't get too excited about preseason, but at the same time it was like the Rams were down by 8 at the time, and Detroit was down by 6 at the time, and both bets won. So.
What do you make of all the home teams winning in Week 1? Maybe more importantly, what about the low scores? Ed, the stat man, last week on the program said he was going to bet over in every game in Week 1 of the NFL preseason. That strategy didn't work out too well.
Yeah, sometimes I think there is a bias, based upon what happened in previous seasons. The scoring has generally been on an upward bias in the regular season. I'm much more hesitant to get really overly enthralled with trends in preseason NFL because it's even smaller database than the regular season, which is a small sample in itself. So I don't think you can be overwhelmed by it. I think it's one data point, and it easily could turn around in the future.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with ComptrBob. We'll talk college football on tonight's program. Bob, to preview the Pac-12, I'll take my shot at the Big Ten. A winner tonight with the Cubs at Wrigley over the Milwaukee Brewers. Hendricks and Peralta, the confirmed starters. Kyle Hendricks, just 24 years of age. He was spectacular, worked into the 8th inning. The Cubs beat the Brewers 3-0. And Bob, one thing I like to do, I watch the games religiously, and in watching Kyle Hendricks perform, a couple of notes that I jotted down. You've got to look for things when you're watching games. You've got to look at things that might fool the guys who are into the advanced metrics. And that's hard to do. That's not easy because the advanced metrics these days, they take into account a lot that happens on the field. But a couple of notes on Kyle Hendricks that might sneak past the numbers guys. One, a great game manager. He seems to get what he needs. If he's in a pickle, he can muscle up, get the strikeout, or maybe the runners are on first and second, or the bags are juiced with one out, he can induce a ground ball double play. Tremendous composure on the hill. That might not show up in the numbers. Also, his ability to interact with the teammates. I've always liked that quality in pitchers. You know, it's not, you don't have to be the most popular guy around, but you want to see a guy who's listening and learning, especially a guy who's only 24 years of age. So I like a lot of what Kyle Hendricks does on the mound. What's more, and maybe more important, how do the hitters react to the pitches? You know, is he fooling guys? Is he getting ahead in the count? A hitter's reaction to a pitch, that might not show up in the numbers. And also, how hard were the balls hit? That can fool guys who only look at the box score. Although, Bob, I hate to say it, with the advanced metrics these days, it's hard to get past, put anything past the math guys, because now they're not only clocking the pitches coming in terms of miles per hour, they're clocking how hard the ball is hit. The ball was hit at 102 miles an hour going out. So, you know, it's amazing what's happening to sports these days, but those are the little edges I try to look for, Bob. I try to find things that might not show up in a box score or show up, say, in the KenPom.com efficiency ratings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And, they're also clocking how many times he attempts to strike at a ball that's outside the strike zone. And a lot of the strike zone statistics now are really fabulous to give you an idea of I also like pitchers that pitch to a hitter's weakness, and knowing his weakness as far as the strike zone, the statistics about that can be very useful to a pitcher.
At what point might you get paralyzed by the numbers, Bob? Is there a point where there's too much information?
Well, you can always just be inundated with too much information. You have to, as Nate Silver so cleverly put it, you have to get at the fundamental signal, which is, in terms of basically runs scored in baseball and points scored and points defended in football. I'm just waiting for an analyst to say his keys to the game are, well, one team's got to score more points than the other, because that's ultimately what it's all about. So we have to keep in mind that that's the ultimate reason behind our bets, and then we have to live with the probability model that we're not always going to be right.
Hear, hear. And also that we could be right and get a wrong score. That happens all the time. And a lot of sports bettors, they love to cry. There's no crying in the sports books of Nevada, by the way. That's not allowed. But oftentimes, these random events will change the result of the game, and sports bettors, cry about what takes place on the field. You don't always get the just result, but we have to respect the final score. That's how the bets are paid.
Right. Yeah, and you have to not overreact to things that may be just good luck, like a hot streak, and not overreact to a cold streak. Because those will happen as well. And there's times where I've been at a blackjack table, which is even worse because that's probably less random than sports. I mean, sports can be really cruel, but blackjack I've sat through losing 15, 16 hands in a row, and you just got to bite your tongue and just hope to heck that the dealer is not cheating.
Is there any way to quantify the randomness of sports? With the major betting sports, say pro and college football, pro and college basketball, and Major League Baseball, is one more random? Do we get more random results in one than the other, percentage-wise? Because obviously baseball, with a number of games, you're going to get plenty of random results. But percentage-wise, can we quantify how random these sports are?
Well, you can make a distribution of the result. In baseball, it's fundamentally a money line game, and so you can quantify, how many $2 dogs win versus how many $3 dogs win, and vice versa. And the game is one of the reasons why we don't see many $3 dogs anymore is the parity in the game and the fact that we haven't gone through an expansion cycle in baseball in a number of years, so the teams are much more competitive. In college football, you get, and also college basketball, you get much less random money line results. You still get some upsets, but for instance, in the March Madness in the tournament, you've had, I think it's 28 or 29 years now, and you've had 4 number 1 seeds, and none of them have lost. So you get some mismatches where you get some fairly regular results in terms of the money line. In terms of point spreads, I think the sports, just off the top of my head, are fairly similar in the randomness, because I think the lines have been typically getting a little better, although if you really look at all the lines and chart out the statistical distribution, the closing lines really haven't gotten much better in regards to the actual results. So I think that's a work I may have to take off a couple months and study to give you a more definitive answer.
Spoken like a true mathematician. Let's step aside and take a quick timeout right here. When we return, we'll get to college football action. Bob to preview the Pac-12. I'll handle the Big Ten. You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour.
There's no such thing as a sure thing, unless you're talking about Ion Gaming. Ion Gaming is a website dedicated to the hearts and minds of sports bettors everywhere. If you're looking for smart, sophisticated sports handicapping information and insight,
go to EOG.com.
If you're looking for the latest news on the ever-changing landscape of Nevada's race and sportsbook industry,
go to EOG.com.
If you're looking for the most recent developments involving the worldwide sports betting scene with an emphasis on the leading sports books in San Jose, Costa Rica,
go to EOG.com.
And finally, if you're looking to join an online community of sports gamblers where registration is free and the information is priceless,
go to EOG.com.
You get the idea. Why gamble on other sports betting websites when Ion Gaming is a sure thing?
And I love a sure thing.
Hi, this is Rick Alec, president of Sports Options. Sports Options is a sports information tool designed to give sports bettors of all types the necessary edge needed to improve their bottom line. With Sports Options, you'll never lay a bad number again. We provide you with live odds from the leading sports books in the world, from Costa Rica to Curacao, London to Las Vegas, and everywhere in between. Sports Options also provides the fastest and most accurate injury information, lightning-quick score updates, and game analysis from 30-year handicapping veteran Mark Simons. We offer affordable services for players of all levels, starting at just $99 per month. To see which service best fits your needs, you can take advantage of our 7-day free trial. No credit card is needed. Just go to www.sportsoptions.com and click on the free trial link. I'm confident you'll be impressed with our product, and you'll find it the most complete and comprehensive on the market. In fact, if you don't like Sports Options after 30 days, we'll refund you 100% of your subscription costs, no questions asked. Go to sportsoptions.com for all the details, or call 702-835-1743, and one of our friendly customer service representatives will be happy to help you. Sports Options, information you can bet on.
And we are back. The EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with you on a Tuesday night. My featured guest this evening is ComptrBob. Always good to have him talking sports and sports betting. He plays to the smart guys. Gamebred is one of those smart guys. He has one more question, actually a couple of more questions. You can go to the main forum at EOG.com to check out some of his questions. Does ComptrBob have any idea what Talib was getting at when he said statistics is a pseudoscience that plays on our desires to be suckers for certainties?
Well, Talib is the author of Fooled by Randomness and his second book, The Black Swan, which focuses on really fairly unlikely events that happen more often than we give them credit for. I think statistics is a legitimate science. It's not necessarily a pseudoscience, but it needs to be understood in terms of the assumptions that are made before launching into a particular analysis using statistics. So a bit of the example that I gave before in the question that Gamebred posed about a particular query on a database in baseball with dogs between a line of 105 and 130 gave a return on investment of plus 1.6% using the SDQL database that he referred to in the forum. And my response last week was that, first of all, you have to think through your hypothesis very carefully. His hypothesis was basically given by that particular query, and he said that those were just teams that he tended to bet a lot. The problem that I pointed out that if you don't properly pose a hypothesis that's well thought out with good rationale behind it, you'll end up essentially data mining, because you'll make that. I would be very curious to know, is that the only data set that he used in making a query? Because if you start making multiple hypotheses, then you start destroying your the statistical significance of any test you might do. The reason I use a t-test instead of a z-test is, in my mind, the t-test is essentially the only applicable statistical test. The z-test is simply the same as the t-test when you have an infinite number of samples. So there's, in other words, when you actually know the standard deviation of the distribution. So I don't want to get too technical, but they're effectively the same thing, except that the t-test will work for small samples as well as big samples. So there was no particular differentiation between those two, but they are used in order to determine if results are statistically significant. So I guess my answer is that you have to be very careful of the hypothesis that you're doing. In his case, what I did was I ran that same hypothesis for the season 2013. And instead of an ROI of plus 1.5%, you get a ROI of minus 0.4% or 0.4%. So those bets in season of 2013 all of a sudden would not be profitable, they would be unprofitable. And then further I ran it for the season 2012, and the ROI is minus 3%. So that shows another technique, is you can use what's called out-of-sample data. He used the season of 2014, but we've got plenty of other data that we can use, especially in baseball. And so that would essentially lead me to the conclusion that particular bracket is not profitable on a general basis, just blindly betting those teams that fall within that range.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with ComptrBob. We're now set to preview the upcoming college football season. We'll take two conferences tonight. Bob will handle the Pac-12. I'll take the Big Ten. I will not go through each team one by one. There's 14 teams in the Big Ten this year, what with Maryland and Rutgers joining the fray. I should note the Big Ten has lost respect on the national stage largely because of its bowl record the last 4 years. How about 11-21 in bowl games the last 4 years? And amazingly, in those 32 games, the Big Ten team has only been favored in 8 of those 32 games. That tells you the Big Ten has lost respect in the betting marketplace as well. And Bob, how's this for a discovery? I've got one man that I'm going to hang the Big Ten's decline on, most significantly. That's Ohio State's former head coach Jim Tressel, who resigned under fire. He wasn't fired at Ohio State. Instead, he resigned before they fired him. The report out of Ohio State said that Tressel failed to comport himself with honesty and integrity. I remember the two athletes that were high profile there that got in trouble. One was Maurice Claret. The other was Terrell Pryor. And it's hard to believe that Jim Tressel, this last May, was just named the president of Youngstown State University. How do you like that, Bob? Unbelievable that he would land on his feet.
Yeah, that really is, I think, indicative of how college sports is really an old boys network. One of the last ones probably there is that you could go. Not that he doesn't deserve a chance to redeem himself. I'm a big believer in redemption, but to be rewarded with that sort of position of trust and a mark of integrity, which I don't think he has, is kind of disturbing.
His style of play was interesting, too, and I think that's what's set the Big Ten back, because here's what happened. You'll remember he came onto campus. He was a hero for a time. In 2002, that's the last time a Big Ten team won a national championship. He beat Miami of Florida in double overtime, 31-24. He was very good at not losing games. He played to not lose. Jim Tressel once said, "The punt is the most important play in football." The punt. And with that idea of not losing games, playing to not lose, the conservative play calling and all, that came in the face of spread offenses starting in the Big 12, the speed in the Pac-12, the SEC dominance. Ohio State, in its school history, is 0-10 against the SEC in bowl games. Some might say, well, in 2011, they won the Sugar Bowl. They beat Arkansas 31-26. That is true. However, that win was vacated because Jim Tressel used ineligible players during the 2011 Sugar Bowl. So he leaves disgraced. Urban Meyer comes in, good for Ohio State there, although some would say Urban Meyer, doesn't have the cleanest of resumes. When he was at Florida, there were some questionable recruits. And, there's questionable recruiting all the time, I think, in the SEC. But anyway, a long story short, the reason the Big Ten has lost respect on the national stage is they just cannot compete with these teams in late December and early January in the open competition. Sure, they're good at scheduling in September and beating up on MAC teams, but when it comes to the real games, they have struggled in recent years. So that's my big picture look at the Big Ten. Bob, I'll get to more specifics on some of the teams, but that's the first point I wanted to make about Big Ten football.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point, and I also think that even back in the days of Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler, being a Pac-10 guy, obviously I grew up in Seattle, they never seemed, although Woody Hayes wasn't that bad, but Schembechler never seemed to actually get his teams to perform very well in the Rose Bowl. And I remember some years they'd go to Disneyland and they would, be very casual, and then they go to the Rose Bowl and they wouldn't perform. And then the next year they come out and they'd be all serious, and he'd sequester him away, and they'd come out and they wouldn't perform either. So I always got a kick out of when the Pac-10 would beat the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl, but that level of tradition now is kind of gone, which hopefully the new bowl system will replace it with something that's just as exciting, perhaps even more exciting.
About 20 minutes remaining on tonight's program. Let's get to the team-by-team previews. Bob, you're going to break down the Pac-12 squads through the prism of the regular season win totals.
Yeah, I think that's a way that I kind of get my hands around expectations of the market, because I think I want to be aware of that before I start setting a lot of lines. I want to do my own modeling and see if I generally agree or disagree with the particular numbers that come out, and then I can get into more detail on a week-to-week schedule. The week one numbers are already pretty well out in Nevada and offshores, but the regular season win totals have been out for quite some time. So let me start just with the Pac-12 North, and then you want to interject your Big Ten notes in the middle of that, right?
Well, you know what, Bob? Let's just handle the Pac-12. I'll have time later this week to talk Big Ten football. With the time remaining, let's focus on the Pac-12.
Okay, because this is going to be fairly superficial anyway. With the amount of time that we have, but as people are probably aware, the Pac-12 is split into North and South divisions, and then they meet for a championship game. This year we're going to have a 4-team playoff, which has the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl being the semifinal games, and then there's a new game, the so-called +1, which is the championship game after those two bowl games are played. And so the Rose Bowl won't have this, will essentially be a semifinal game this year. Then that is rotated through 4 other bowl games. There'll be 2 bowl games next year that are, let's see, I wrote them down. They're, do you know offhand, John?
Let's see. There are 6. There are 6 all told in the rotation.
Peach Bowl and Fiesta are the last 2. So it'd be Cotton and
Peach Bowl.
No, the Peach and the Fiesta Bowl are the last 2.
Orange Bowl.
The Orange Bowl, right. So we got next year will be the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl. Will be the 2 semifinal games, and then 2 years from now will be the Peach Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl. Anyway, back to the Pac-10 North. Oregon has a season win total of about 10.5 minus 155 to the over. I'm using some of the heritage lines, which I tend to use to track them. I also use bookmaker lines, and I'll note the differences whether they're significant. Oregon is the nice thing about the Pac-12 is many of the quarterbacks are coming back, and so even though there's been some coaching shakeups at Oregon, there's the second-year coach Mark Helfrich is back, and Marcus Mariota, who was a perennial Heisman candidate, is back as well. He had an amazing year last year, 32 touchdown passes to just 4 interceptions. And so Oregon, to me, looks like the class of the North. And we can get into all kinds of reasons for that, but I think I'm going to run out of time. So I'll go on to Stanford, which brings me to my regular season win total bet. I bet Stanford under 8.5, which at Bookmaker is plus 105, and to the under, and it's minus 125 to the over. The reason why is if you look at Stanford's schedule, it's really pretty tough. They have 6 road games and 6 home games. Sometimes they're staggered, but in this case they're symmetric. And Stanford's road games are start out with Game 4 at Washington, then Game 5 at Notre Dame, and Game 7 at Arizona State, Game 9 at Oregon, and Game 11 at California, Game 12 at UCLA. That's a pretty nasty schedule for road games. And with all of the Cardinals' losses, they lost a ton of players to the NFL. Many of the players were in the offensive line. I'm looking definitely at Stanford being under 8.5. I think they easily could lose 4 of those 5 road games, and their Game 2 will be versus USC at home. They may easily lose that game as well. So I think there might even be some hedging opportunities. I think they could easily win 7, but I think they're going to be very, very hard-pressed to win 9.
That's the first of 3 plays from ComptrBob. Stanford under the regular season win total of 8.5 plus $1.05. He'll have 2 more plays for us on tonight's show, an MLB selection and a WNBA play. But let's finish up the Pac-12 North discussion. Bob, you're a Washington alum. Talk about the 2 Washington schools.
Okay. Washington's season win total is 9.5 with under at minus 185. So I think there's been some action there. We have a new coach in Chris Peterson replacing Steve Sarkisian, who went to USC, which he had been a assistant coach there before. Washington's losing its quarterback Keith Price and running back Bishop Sankey, who were an incredible part of their offense. So I think I would lean here to the under, although that minus 185 I can't bet it. But I don't think Washington is going to win 10 games. However, I think Chris Peterson is the unknown. He's got a lot of material, and so it'll be very interesting to see how well Washington does. Washington State, of course, has the controversial coach Mike Leach. Wazoo's win total is 5.5, with the over at minus 125. This might be a pretty good team. They have their quarterback returning, and I think that the North is going to be a fairly tough division, with the exception of Cal, which Cal comes in at a regular win total of 2.5 with minus 130 to the over, and Oregon State at 6.5 minus 190 to the over. Oregon State may be a fairly decent team as well. Again, because of time, maybe we can do another show where I go into more detail here.
Sounds good. ComptrBob, our featured guest, he's talking Pac-12 football. We'll maybe get into it a little more next Tuesday night if Bob has time. Pac-12 South. Bob, what should we know about the USC and UCLA?
Well, I think, again, I think relatively the Pac-12 is going to be an up conference this year from previous years. UCLA is returning its quarterback. Regular season win total is 8.5 minus 130 to the over, or maybe it's 9.5. That's right. USC is 8.5 minus 165 to the over. both those teams are going to be very good. The two Arizona schools, Arizona 6.5, minus 170 to the over, and Arizona State 7.5, minus 110 flat. They're going to be interesting schools to watch, especially Arizona State may well gel this year. The two other underachievers in the South are Colorado at 4.5 wins, minus 170 to the under. That's probably still going to go under because they're going to have a tough time competing. And Utah's 4.5, minus 165 to the over. And those two schools really have not been as strong as they've been tended to be historically, with Colorado when they were in the Big 12 and Utah when they're in the Mountain West.
Those two schools joined the Pac-12 in 2011, and that's when the Pac-12 really took off on the national stage, Bob, with the emergence of both Oregon and Stanford. You know, with those good runs under Chip Kelly and Jim Harbaugh, both who are in the NFL now. When Oregon and Stanford got good, USC, UCLA, of course, USC had that long run of success, but those two...
Another coach, Pete Carroll, who's done fairly well also in the NFL.
Boy, that is a springboard, is it not?
Yeah.
From Pac-12 football into the NFL. And I love coaches who excel at a high level. I put a lot of weight on coaching in my handicapping, all sports, really. And I love to find those games where one coach outsmarts the other, and the battle is won before the war is fought. Just to have a master scheme going into the game, especially if you can find a heady coach in an underdog role. Who would you say is the best Pac-12 coach going these days, Bob?
Well, I think it's really a fairly open question. Personally, my bias is I think Chris Peterson, with his resume at Boise State, it would be pretty hard to unseat as one that bears watching.
I've got a couple of guys to look at in the Big Ten. My personal favorite, I like how you add that because it is subjective. Mark D'Antonio, what he does at Michigan State. He's in his 8th season there. He had a banner year last year. I really think Michigan State's going to be good again this year. Even though they lose so many key players, especially defensively, I think D'Antonio will hold them together with the great system that he has. I love the way they won the Big Ten championship game over Ohio State and then took out Stanford in the Rose Bowl. That's, I think, a team to be reckoned with, and I think they'll win their fair share of games and cover their share of numbers as well. The guy who's the point spread king in the Big Ten, without a doubt, what Urban Meyer has done in his career against the spread is amazing. 90 wins, 55 losses, and 3 ties in his college coaching career. Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, and now Ohio State. And the guy to keep an eye on, I think, James Franklin. I like his edge. He's going into Penn State where Bill O'Brien left. He went from the Big Ten to the NFL. The Big Ten did produce an NFL guy, Bill O'Brien, now with the Houston Texans. But I like the way Franklin played at Vanderbilt. In Big Ten Media Day, he talked about calling a game to hide your deficiencies. Whether it's offensive play calling or defensive play calling, you've got to call the game to hide your deficiencies. And that's what James Franklin did at Vanderbilt, and he'll get a better grade of athlete at Penn State in time. They're handcuffed now because they're ineligible for the postseason. The NC2A sanctions have been tough after the Sandusky scandal, maximum 75 scholarships on their roster. But he's a guy who's going to shake things up, I think, in the Big Ten for years to come. Let's step aside and take a quick timeout right here. When we return, more selections. Bob's given us one, Stanford under 8.5 plus $1.05 for Pac-12 football this season. When we return, he'll give us a MLB selection and a WNBA play. Plus, I'll go on record with a Major League Baseball selection for tomorrow as well. You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour.
There's no such thing as a sure thing, unless you're talking about Ion Gaming. Ion Gaming is a website dedicated to the hearts and minds of sports bettors everywhere. If you're looking for smart, sophisticated sports handicapping information and insight,
Go to EOG.com.
If you're looking for the latest news on the ever-changing landscape of Nevada's race and sportsbook industry,
Go to EOG.com.
if you're looking for the most recent developments involving the worldwide sports betting scene with an emphasis on the leading sportsbooks in San Jose, Costa Rica,
Go to EOG.com.
and finally, if you're looking to join an online community of sports gamblers where registration is free and the information is priceless,
Go to EOG.com.
you get the idea. Why gamble on other sports betting websites when Ion Gaming is a sure thing?
And I love a sure thing.
Time now for the JK Play of the Day. This is John Kelly's single strongest recommendation against the current numbers at the M Resort here in Las Vegas.
Game 953, I'll take the LA Dodgers over the Atlanta Braves, the struggling Atlanta Braves. They've scored 35 runs in their last 14 games. They are 8-15 since the All-Star break. Among those 15 losses includes an 8-game losing streak. Hyun-Jin Ryu, he's been filthy. Have you watched him pitch the last month or so? He's unhittable. Irvin Santana, the mound opponent. I can't believe Atlanta's favored, but they are. I don't think they deserve to be in the favorites role against Ryu and the Dodgers. Betting number 953, the Dodgers over the Braves, take $1.05 or thereabouts. Computer Bob, you have two selections for us. What's your MLB play?
Well, my MLB play will be Kansas City against the Oakland A's. Another case of Kansas City is the dog, getting plus 108 at 5 dimes and similar prices elsewhere. If your book doesn't have a dime line, wait till morning, and probably you can pick off a plus number. The pitching matchup is Vargas against Casimir. Casimir is good, but the Kansas City got to him for 4 runs in Oakland. Vargas has matched up fairly well against the batters. If you look at his stats against the A's various A's batters, and the ones he hasn't done very well against are the A's subs. So I don't think they'll even be in the lineup. So I think he's collectively he's only walked 12 guys in 221 plate appearances against guys that are on the Athletics roster, and he struck out 39, batting average of 231, and on-base percentage of 280. So as a dog, I've got to take the Kansas City Royals to start another win streak, even though I follow the A's closely. They got a lot of their runs out of their system by beating up on the Royals tonight.
Computer Bob was good to us last Tuesday night, giving us the Royals, and he gives us the Royals again for this week. Computer Bob, with a minute left, your WNBA play.
Well, WNBA play is I've been very impressed with the Phoenix Mercury, the way they played the whole year round. They lost a close one against Minnesota, but they turned it around tonight. I had them against the New York Liberty. Tomorrow, the back-to-back games, they'll go up against the Atlanta Dream, laying 5.5. And the funny thing about Phoenix is when they're laying single digits, I hate to say it as a mathematician, but it doesn't matter what the line is. And hopefully people won't crucify me for that comment. I don't really seriously mean it. But Phoenix, when they rock and roll, they are playing together. They finally taught Brittany Griner how to play basketball. And Candace Dupree turned around what I thought was just a pathetic career. She's playing much better this year.
Computer Bob, thanks for your time. Any chance we can lean on you one more week? Will you join us again next Tuesday night?
I will, and I'll just be listening to you give a Big Ten analysis.
Very well. We'll do that. Computer Bob on the program. Tomorrow, Ed the Stat Man joins us. Maybe then I can sneak in the Big Ten analysis. I know Bobby the Owl wants a question to be asked tomorrow from Ed the Stat Man. Ed last week gave us the key numbers in the NFL. Tomorrow we'll ask Ed for the key numbers in college football. Then Thursday night, Paul McDonald, Paulie Mack, to be in studio with an early look at NFL Week 1 selections and some college football opening week plays as well. For Computer Bob, I'm John Kelly. Thanks for listening to the EOG Sports Hour. Our conversation continues at EOG.com.